As a baseball connoisseur, how surprised were you when Soto went to the Mets last year?
Tell you the truth, Jay, I wasn't surprised at all because of going back to Old Timers Day that you got me there with the Mets. That I got a chance to meet the ownership. I got a chance to meet, Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, and I saw firsthand how dynamic they are, how warm they are, particularly how interested that they were to hang out in the clubhouse and meet guys, and how approachable they were. So I knew right away that dynamic couple, that couple ownership. People talk about Steve Cohen. It's really Mr. and Mrs. Cohen that are so dynamic together. Yes.
Grandpa Cohen too,
Absolutely. So I wasn't surprised. I could see them selling Juan Soto and his family on a family atmosphere with the Mets, and that's what's going on in Queens right now. That's the dynamic, and so no, I wasn't shocked and I wasn't surprised. I could actually absolutely understand why Juan Soto and his family picked the Mets.
Jay Horwitz, another edition of Amazing Conversations with my friend of over 40 years, close to 40 years. Well, I'm old. Mr. David Cohn of Yes Network, Sunday Night Baseball. And David, with the Mets Yankees coming up in Yankee Stadium in this 2025 edition, what better guy to speak to? The only guy in history with 20 games with the Mets, 20 games with the Yankees, 10 years apart. How did you do that?
I don't know, Jay. It's a good question. I guess it's just the ability to kind of reinvent yourself along the way. Most pitchers, you lose a little bit of stuff physically, you lose a little bit of arm speed over the years. And certainly when I think about, when I had my best stuff, I was with the Mets. The best years I had in terms of physically being strong was with the Mets. So when I got to the Yankees, I kind of learned a different way to go about it. And, you got to be creative sometimes. You think outside of the box and you reinvent yourself along the way.
Well, you did a good job. Part of 4 World Series champions, the Yankees, one with the Blue Jays. Side note, do you know in 1992, if we had had a better season than the Mets, probably wouldn't have got traded to the Blue Jays and won over the Yankees. That was the year of the worst team money could buy, 70 and 92. And I remember in the plane, I walked back and told you, David, can't tell anybody you're going to be traded to the Blue Jays. And you were, and then started your Yankee career. So we have been better, no trade.
Well, yeah, it was, and as you know, Jay, I was devastated. I love playing for the Mets. I love living in New York, and I appreciate that because if you remember, Jay, that trade happened after the trade deadline. It was towards the end of August, so I thought I was safe at that point. So without you, Jay, telling me and giving me a heads up, I would have been completely blindsided by that in the morning after a West Coast flight, after a red eye back to the East Coast. So I'll never forget that, Jay. You were the one who kind of let me know, hey, heads up, something's coming here, and I'll always appreciate that.
Dave, you had a great career, a Cy Young, World Series champion. But you know who pays you the greatest compliment of all? Keith Hernandez said you would have been a perfect 1986 Met. You would have fit right in. You would have been one of the guys. And what better compliment from the captain? You would have been a perfect 1986 Met. What's better than that?
Yeah, that's the ultimate. I mean, the 86 Mets are a legendary team in this city that will never be forgotten. Yeah, I played on some legendary teams with the Yankees too, the 98 Yankees and the 86 Mets. Boy, it's still to this day debated, right? I mean, if you're a Mets fan, you think about the 86 Mets as being, one of the best teams New York's ever seen. So that is quite a compliment. And, I grew up with those guys. Jay, you know this. I was a kid from Kansas City who'd never been to New York. And certainly those guys taught me everything. Keith and Ronnie and even Rusty Staub to a certain extent. Rusty and his charitable activities and his restaurant, Rusty's Ribs. I learned a lot from those guys, and I'll never forget it.
David, isn't it crazy from the 88 team? Ronnie and Keith, 2/3 of our TV booth. You've won a great career with your announcing. Isn't it kind of nuts to have 3 teammates to be so prominent in the broadcasting in this area now?
Yeah, nobody saw that coming. That's for sure. And we didn't talk about that at all. I never talked about it with Keith when we were teammates or Ronnie. We were consumed with being players. And I don't think a lot of players think about post-career all that often. And certainly, none of us would have thought, hey, look at us all these years later that we're on other sides of towns, but we're both doing broadcasting all these years.
You had a big market too. You've expanded your stuff to the ESPN. How difficult is it to balance the ESPN with your Yankee duties? bounce around. Is that hard to keep track of everybody, all the teams now?
Yes, definitely the national schedule. You have to well, first you get the opportunity to meet a lot of different teams and managers and all the cities we get to go to. But yeah, it's much more coverage, much more work, much more travel. So yes, I mean the good part of it is that I love what I do and I get a chance to stay connected to the game and meet all these different managers and players. But the tough part is the travel. You know, all these years and all this travel, as you know, Jay, that's one of the toughest part of the jobs is just being on the road so much.
David, let me ask you this: Do you, the first game is Friday night Yankees team? ESPN got the game Sunday night, right? This week. Do you think the Subway Series lost any luster, or is the Steve Cohn factor and the Soto stuff that new spark to the series? How do you think Soto's reception is going to be Friday night?
It's going to be great. It's going to be depends on which side you're on, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
obviously he's going to get introduced to the Bronx cheer. They're so passionate, but I think there's going to be a lot of fans who are real thankful for the year they had. It was a fantastic year he had. Him and Aaron Judge together last year was almost historic when you think about it in terms of the numbers. But I understand. I understand Steve Cohen. I understand his wife too. I mean, they're a dynamic couple, and things have changed in Queens. So. I applaud that. I think they're great. I don't think the Subway Series has lost any luster. If you look at the attendance, Jay, and you know this, it's the same. I mean, it's sold out. People want to see this, and there's a new dynamic involved, obviously, with the ownership, with the Mets, and then obviously Juan Soto is center stage, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the Bronx this weekend.
David, what's your background? Let me tell you, everybody knows you had a great Yankee career, but look at the stats. You actually won 17 more games with the Mets, one more year with the Mets, had almost a point better ER with the Mets. What people don't realize, Tom Seaver has their strikeout record, 19 strikeouts in the game, tied by one David Cohn. So a big part of Mets history, and in his 7 years with the Mets, 6 of 7 double-figure games, double-figure wins. Pretty good career.
I loved my time with the Mets. You know, I was at my peak powers with the Mets in terms of the arc of a pitcher's life and his strength and his arm strength. And I remember leading the major leagues in strikeouts 3 years in a row with the Mets. And so it was certainly leading up to 1992. It was a time where I thought we were going to do more. We thought we were going to have a dynasty with the Mets. We really did, and there were missed opportunities. There were certainly a host of reasons why that didn't happen, but we really had high expectations, and I was proud to be a Met. I love being a Met, and I certainly had some of my best years with the Mets.
You know what I appreciate, David, with your Yankee ties that you came back to our old timers day a couple of years ago. Really, I was really happy to see you, and I think people got understood how much of a part you were of Mets history. In '88, 20-3, ERA just a little bit over 2. I still remember, was it Game 3 when Dwight walked the guy in the ninth inning, and then who hit the home run? I think it did.
Sosha, Mike Sosha, yeah.
And we lose in 12 innings. That was,
Yeah.
that was, and we won 100 games that year. The Mets. It could have been a different year. Maybe that could have been the start of the dynasty stuff, and everything.
Yeah, there's no doubt that 1988 was the bounce back year. There was 1986 Mets. Everybody knows about that. There's a lot of injuries. The entire pitching staff went down in 1987, and the
And you
Cardinals
broke your,
won the division. Yes.
is that you broke your pinky right in San Francisco bunting?
Yes, exactly. I mean, every pitcher, Ron Darling hurt his thumb. Ricky Aguilera went down. Dwight Gooden had some issues. Sid Fernandez had some issues, injury issues. The entire starting rotation went down with injuries. So we bounced back in 1988, and that was going to be our year to kind of to put a bookends between 1986 and then get it going again in 1988. And Oral Hershiser had a great year that year. He was unbeatable. He came in
Whatever you get.
relief. Yeah, he came in relief in that game, and so that was a missed opportunity without a doubt. 1980, a lot of things happened in that series. It's something I'll never forget. Certainly, the newspaper column I did with Bob Clappish is something that impacted that series. It impacted me on the mound, and
So you came back and won a complete game right after that. I mean, we lost in Game 7, so you bounced back, and we had a little. Lasorda was one guy to take advantage of that stuff, wasn't he? I mean,
yes, yes, he was. They had he was a master at motivating his players, at finding things that he didn't like about the opponents that he could use for motivation. That was an old school mentality. He was great at it. I made a huge mistake, and I had to pay for it. And certainly, we had other opportunities in that series to win that series. And if we would have beat the Dodgers, then we would have matched up against the Oakland A's, and that was the matchup everybody wanted to see. Tony La Russa's Oakland A's and Ricky Henderson, Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire was supposed to match up with the mighty Mets, and that's a matchup that never happened.
You bring up Clapp. Do you remember maybe before he got there? So there were three roommates like in 85 or 86. Bob Clappish, Lenny Dykstra, and the great Billy Bean roomed together. That was pretty and they all had different careers, so to speak. I tell you, Dave, the only time I ever rooted against you was in Game 4 of the 2000 World Series. Denny Nagel was pitching a great game, and he brought you in for one batter. He got Big Mike to pop up.
Yes, that was at the end of my career. I kind of fell on my face that year, had some injuries, and really my skills diminished. And Joe Torre still put me in that spot, and I think everybody was shocked. There was nobody on base. Denny Nagel was one out away from qualifying for a win in the World Series, and Mike Piazza was up, and Joe Torre, wanted me to face Mike Piazza in that spot. He told me before the game to be ready to come in relief for especially for Piazza. So I knew that was a possibility, but I still was shocked that he actually put me in that spot.
Yeah, David, let me ask you from the Yankee side of it. The Mets have won all four games last year. I think they won 8 of 12. Do you think? I mean, you think from what you hear from the Yankee players, there's still, we got to win. I mean, you think these games are not important? The Yankees are playing well now. They've had a big injury last night. I guess Cabrera got hurt and everything. You think there's still the same old yin yang between the players?
I think the players understand the nature of the game. They understand the battle in the city now, and the Mets are playing so well, and they have such dynamic ownership that will do anything to win. And the fact that Juan Soto is right in the middle of this now kind of reinvigorates the whole situation. So yeah, I think in some ways this is more exciting than ever. What's happening this weekend? How good the Mets are, how good the Yankees are, and Juan Soto right in the middle of it, and two ownership groups that are dynamic ownership groups. In some ways, it's never been better. This matchup has never been better. So that makes this weekend really even that much more exciting.
How, as a baseball connoisseur, how surprised were you when Soto went to the Mets last year? Shocked, not at all. Just
Tell you the truth, Jay, I wasn't surprised at all because of going back to Old Timers Day that you got me there with the Mets. That I got a chance to meet the ownership. I got a chance to meet Mr. and Mrs. Cohen, and I saw firsthand how dynamic they are, how warm they are, particularly how interested that they were to hang out in the clubhouse and meet guys, and how approachable they were. So I knew right away that dynamic couple, that couple ownership. People talk about Steve Cohen. It's really Mr. and Mrs. Cohen
and,
that are so
and
dynamic together.
and
Yes.
Grandpa Cohen too.
Absolutely. So I wasn't surprised. I could see them selling Juan Soto and his family on a family atmosphere with the Mets, and that's what's going on in Queens right now. That's the dynamic, and so no, I wasn't shocked and I wasn't surprised. I could actually absolutely understand why Juan Soto and his family picked the Mets.
Did you, David? Did you get to know Carlos Mendoza much when he was with the Yankees? I think he handles the media great. A low key guy. He tells the truth, doesn't BS the writers. Not flashy, but tells you what it is. Did you have much dealings with him at all as a bench coach?
Yeah, I mean, just on a day in and day out basis, conversations around the batting cage before the game, and a chance just to informally talk to him, and when you're behind the scenes. And yes, what you see is what you get with Carlos Mendoza. A keen eye for talent too. That's something that everybody talks about, this demeanor as a manager, and his ability to be completely bilingual and handle all factions of the clubhouse culturally, but his keen eye for talent, his background in player development is, to me, one of the best features he has. He knows talent. He knows how to develop talent. He knows how to see it, and certainly his talent evaluation skills are second to none in my mind.
Yeah, he respects the alumni too. So one game, I forget which game it was. You threw 161, 162 pitches in a game. That would the manager ever did that this year? He'd probably be shot right in the dugout. I mean, that's never going to happen again, right?
No, I don't see that happening. I mean, you're going back to my Mets days in 1992. I think I threw a 1-0 shutout against the Giants at Shea Stadium, and I think it was 166 pitches by the time the game was over. So yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I averaged 130 plus pitches a game during that 92 season there, and or sort of a significant part of it. So yeah, that's just not going to happen anymore. Although I will say this, I think starting pitchers could get pushed a little further. I have no problem with 115 pitches or 110 pitches. This 100 pitch barrier doesn't need to be, etched in stone. I think a lot of starting pitchers could go a little bit further.
Yeah, David, I know you're into the analytics part of it. I mean, too much, too little. There's got to be a balance with the analytics and the coaching and the scouting. I mean, where do you think we are in the game with that now?
Absolutely. I think information is great. The analytics, especially on the pitcher side, with the high speed cameras and the ability to pitch design and measure pitches and the spin rates and the shape of breaking balls, is something I'm fascinated with. And I think pitchers are ahead of the curve and using that part of analytics, that technology involved in pitching. Certainly, I think the hitters need to catch up a little bit, and they are. But there's still a place in this game for the feel of the game. You still, Joe Torre used to call it, the heartbeat of a pitcher or the heartbeat of a player. That's still a real hard thing to analyze. So there's still parts of the game that really require experience and feel for the game. And I think that's coming back in vogue a little bit around the league.
Yeah, Tony. Even though the Yankees, you still have kept up your Met tie. Friendly with Darlene and Keith, and actually go to Johnny Franco's son's wedding. So it's a good thing. You just managed to bond, connect with everybody in your career, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I love those guys. I learned how to love New York from Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling and John Franco, for that matter, the kid that grew up in Brooklyn. So I still consider those guys close friends. And absolutely, I'm forever thankful for those relationships. And I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for the Mets and for those guys. And so deep down, I would love to see another Subway Series, in the World Series.
That would be great. You mentioned Rusty for a second. Did he import you any of his charity stuff? I know you're big, do a lot of charity on your end in the city. Was Rusty influenced with that on your getting into your charity endeavors?
Absolutely. Rusty was the best. I mean, legendary what he did in this city from a charity standpoint, the amount of money he raised, the awareness he raised, the relationships he made over the years. There was nobody like Rusty Staub from a business standpoint, running his restaurant, from all the connections he made. The firemen and police widows understand who Rusty Staub is. They understand how much money he raised and awareness he raised. Rusty was the top shelf guy. He was top of the class in terms of professionalism, off the field work, business acumen. I've never met anybody in my life quite like Rusty Staub.
What was your charity of choice?
Arthritis. Yeah, my father had rheumatoid arthritis, which was really debilitating for him at the end of his life. Really affected his hands, his knees. He worked in a meat factory, the graveyard shift, and it was in a cooler a lot that kind of exacerbated that situation with his health. But nonetheless, yeah, I was a part of the Arthritis Foundation, and certainly ALS too as well. Lou Gehrig's disease, an insidious disease. We have Sarah Langs, who is amazing, works with Major League Baseball, is currently still working, but has ALS and has raised an enormous awareness for it. So, yes, ALS is a big part too.
Well, one thing you mentioned, Keith, one day when you were pitching at Shea one day, and he gave me a heart attack. I go on the mound, look at my eyes, and I have my scoreboard. He's wearing 17 now. Where the hell did that come from? 44 is no more. And Charlie Sanders, who was equipment, never told me what switch it was in one star. I forget what it was, Coney.
Yeah, it's some of those memories run into each other. Sometimes it's hard to put it all together. But one thing I do remember, Jay, is that, especially with regards to you, and I know you don't like self promotion. You were the guy promoting all the other guys, but you were the absolute best PR director across the board, both on and off the field. You took care of guys off the field when trouble happened. And people, there's so many stories people don't know about Jay Horwitz. Jay Horwitz was the first guy we called when we got in trouble, and that's unheard of. You don't usually call the team traveling, the team PR director, when you have off the field trouble. So that's the kind of relationship you had with all of us, Jay, and none of us who have ever been around you will ever forget that.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed my job, and this is my 46th year with the Mets, David. I don't know if I'll make 50, but I mean, it's a long time. Listen, you've been a good friend. I'm really happy. Before we get, you had a best-selling New York Times book with Jack Curry to your resume, so you're doing it all, and I appreciate our friendship, and I look forward to seeing you over the weekend.
Sounds great, Jay. Anytime for you.
Thank you, Coney. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for doing this. Bye.
You got it. Anytime.